Welcome back. I'm Elisa, and we are going through the endocrine system. So we're going through actually the second part. The hypothalamus and the pituitary have this relationship, and so this is the second video for that. So let's get started. So as you can see here, we have a graphic representing the posterior pituitary, the anterior pituitary, as well as its connection up into the hypothalamus, found and seated deeply in the brain. So I wanted to kind of just show you this little, just to kind of remind you of this relationship. So let's look at some of the hormones that the hypothalamus can secrete that will in turn result in the secretion of subsequent hormones from the pituitary proper. So there are like hormones, involved proteins, 8 hormones that are produced in the hypothalamus. So 6 of them are going to regulate the anterior pituitary, right? So those are kind of like the big guns. And then there's 2 that are going to go into the posterior pituitary. So the 6 that are going to be kind of controlling the anterior pituitary are going to be things like thyrotropin releasing hormones, so TRH, gonadotropin releasing hormones, G like little nRH, corticotropin releasing hormones, so that's the CRH1, also growth hormone, so that's growth hormone releasing hormones, so that's the GHRH1, for example. And so these are going to actually activate the anterior pituitary to start secreting a couple of others. Things that are really important, like thyroid stimulating hormone, prolactin, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. So remember, all those ones, are going to be used in things like, maturation of oocytes and gonads and all that, as well as, thyroid, which is going to control metabolic rates and a handful of other very important things like calcium regulation in the body, and of course, growth hormone, GH, growth hormone. So PIH is going to stop things like the secretion of prolactin and somatostatin, and so that is going to also stop things like growth. It's kind of like everything slows down a little bit, just kind of like brings it to a halt a bit. The 2 other hypothalamic hormones that we're going to talk about also are really important. So things like oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone. And so both of these are actually already manufactured for the most part, and they're stored in the posterior pituitary because we need them like just in case. And then when we do need them, we need them like right then and there, like now. So the paraventricular nuclei of the hypothalamus produces the oxytocin, and the supraoptic nuclei produce the antidiuretic hormone. So that's going to be something that modulates water. The posterior pituitary doesn't make them, but it does store them because they're super important for those quick release, quick responses. So we'll look at those a little bit more in depth later on. So let's start looking at the histology of the pituitary gland because you will see these slides on your average test, right? And so it's just kind of important to kind of get there. One of the important things to distinguish these 2 from each other is, like, so far in all the graphics, you've seen us illustrate the anterior pituitary, the one up in the front, the gland proper material, as being darker. Well, if you look at the slide, so this is like a hemoxyl and eosine stain. And so you can actually see that these are like cuboidal type cells. They're nice, they're big, they're little marshmallows. You can see the nuclei. So these are producing these hormones. So also you have parts of the immune system that are going to be granulocytes, specifically things like basophils, right? You have acetophils. You also have the blood vessels, the vasculature, which is represented by like teeny tiny little red blood cells. So those are all densely packed, ready to make and manufacture these hormones that we've been talking about. And then the posterior pituitary, you want to keep in mind that that is neural tissue proper, is going to be constituted a little bit different. So like what we're going to see a lot of is actually the fiber material, right? Extending out from the axons of these neurons. And so that's why you don't see as many cell bodies, like nice, big, juicy, hormone-producing cuboidal cells, right? What you will see, however, are just these like broad fibrous pink endings. So what you would think about this, these are the nerve endings. This is the axon endings. This is where that hormone is stored right there. So glial cells, again, so are the dark red ones. And so glial cells are going to be cells that are going to like maintenance and groom and protect up all of these nerve endings, right? And so those are kind of like two different ways to look at those. So anterior pituitary hormones. So the anterior lobe of the pituitary is going to be synthesizing these the six big hormones, right? Just like the six big ones for pituitary. So pituitary, as you can imagine, is going to, you probably already know from earlier in your education that pituitary glands are going to be regulating sexual development, maturation, and cycles in humans. So they turn on and they turn off at specific stages of the life cycle. And so as you can imagine, we're going to be looking at the hormones that are going to be, controlling the details of this orchestrated event. So the two gonadotrophin class hormones that target specifically the gonads, remember that's the ovaries and the testes, are going to be FSH and LH, so follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. So in females, it's going to be, this is when we're starting to kind of take the follicles, which are little pre-egg cells, and we start kind of pushing them through and starting the development of them. And this is also going to be the initial hormone that's going to promote that sperm production in males. However, luteinizing hormone, it still plays a role in gamete production, or actually maturation, but it kind of does a little bit different. So for luteinizing hormone, it actually stimulates the cycle of ovulation generally. And it's going to work in a later stage than the follicle stimulating hormone. And so that's going to be producing the corpus luteum to kind of start secreting these downstream hormones like progesterone, right? And in males, this is going to secrete, or luteinizing hormone causes an increase in testosterone to be secreted from the testes. And then kind of on the other end of the spectrum is like at the non-directly reproductive end is going to be the TSH, and this is the thyroid stimulating hormone. And so what this is doing is this is actually stimulating the like the thyroid hormone, as you can imagine, it is thyroid stimulating hormone. And the thyroid is going to act in, again, quite a few components of regulation. So everything from temperature to metabolism to sleep cycles, calcium levels in the blood, like just like a ton of stuff for that thyroid, very meticulously regulated. Corticotropic hormone, sorry, ACTH, stimulates adrenal cortex to secrete glucocorticoids, right? So these glucocorticoids are actually kind of a dimer of two different molecules, with the base one being like a steroid based. Also, we have PRL, which is prolactin, and this is going to be used in kind of few places. So after birth, it stimulates mammary glands to synthesize milk. It also is showing evidence to maybe be useful in human attachment, development of relationships. Also, growth hormone, which really has one big job, and that is to stimulate mitosis and differentiation or specialization of those cells. And we're going to see this one mainly in things like wound repair, but also in maturation and just like the getting bigger of kids. However, we also see growth hormone stimulated in cancer type cells in clusters. So that's one that kind of gets in there a little bit. Okay. All right, sorry, that's it for what we're going to talk about in terms of the pituitary hormone classes. And so I hope that was helpful, and I hope you all are out there having a great day. Bye.